How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? I see the so-called experts are claiming that property prices in the UK will rise this year. Interest rates will come down, and so will inflation. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. I'm not sure who these experts are, or who even says they're experts, but let's have a look at some basic facts which seem to have escaped those so-called experts. Over the years, I do make predictions about the direction of house prices, but not always, which is why I've never been wrong. Some years I make no predictions at all because nothing special is happening, and I think I've made it clear that I have no intention of making a prediction this year for the simple reason we have a world which has been taken over by brain-dead politicians who are making a complete hash of things which we folks have to put up with. I can't predict the actions of madmen. What I can do is present a few basic facts. In short, if we lived in a world that was not run by screwed-up teenagers for politicians, house prices would be likely to go down this year. Inflation would go up, and interest rates would probably have to rise as well. Or there would have to be a bout of money printing, which would lead to a falling value of the currency. I'll try and explain what I mean. We live in Europe, and we are still living under the yoke of a rogue organisation called NATO. It does nothing but provoke wars. It is financed and run by the administration in Washington. Its current iteration is the fiasco that is the Ukraine, which was started by one of Washington's many regime changes back in 2014. Or, alternatively, it was started when NATO promised Russia that in turn for Russia disbanding the USSR and moving out of Eastern Europe, NATO would, and I quote, not advance a single step, unquote. That was back in 1991? Of course, Washington almost immediately reneged on that undertaking. That has ultimately led to a disruption of essential trade with Russia. That has in turn led to problems with essential supplies that Europe can't or won't provide for itself, which in turn has led to the gradual decline of Western Europe. The UK could be energy self-sufficient. The governments so far have turned their back on that idea. I make no comment on whether that's a good idea or it's stupid, but simply point to the result. Those of you living up north either become cold or broke. Industry goes somewhere else, which puts people out of work. That increases the need for importing goods, which the country can no longer produce. Due to non-existent border controls, the population's exploding. There aren't the jobs for the people flooding into the country, so they become a drain on the tax take, swamp social services, and more people means more food has to be imported, leading to even bigger trade deficits. Let me sum up the result of all the above. Less money in people's pockets, less money in the government exchequer, more disruption of government services. A positive for the housing market ought to be that more accommodation is required, except that it is required for those who can't pay for it, so a fat lot of use that is. Because the above is going to cause an increase in government spending at the same time as the money in people's pockets is reducing, the tax take is also reducing. That will lead to more money printing, which will lead through to more inflation, because people's costs will then be increasing while their incomes are not keeping pace with the combined effects of inflation and the continuing decline in the value of the currency. They will not be able to spend more on buying houses. Well, to me that seems obvious, but obviously not to the experts. In fact, people are likely to be reining in their spending. That will lead to a sag in house prices, not an increase. As I repeatedly say, house prices depend on the ability of people to pay increased prices. That metric drives most of the rise and fall in house prices. The rest of the house price driver is the availability of credit. Almost all house purchases rely on borrowing. When the economy is contracting, which it is, banks are less willing to increase lending. They are more likely to rein in their lending, which in turn will reduce the money supply, which in turn will reduce small businesses' chances of keeping or increasing their overdraft facilities, and that will adversely affect the business cycle and the economic well-being of the country. And of course that will lead back into all the other metrics I've mentioned above. In other words, we have a self-perpetuating downward spiral taking place. And that is Europe-wide. Turning to some of the metrics I use, I notice that the prices of real estate are not currently rising, but are static or falling. I also notice that my auction index is showing reduced percentages of property selling at auction. That, of course, is an early warning indication that the market is contracting. Summing up, governments are spending more than they take in, so they need to borrow or print money. The more they borrow, with already creaky underlying security, the more lenders will need more security for their loans, which means interest rates will be staying high for the foreseeable future. If governments print, then the value of the currency will fall even more, which will give the same effect as inflation. Both the above effects will put pressure on private purses. That means house prices will suffer. In other words, the alleged experts don't know what they're talking about. What's new? Okay, let's have a brief look anyway, at the international situation. Ukraine has been obliterated. I'm wondering who will offer to rebuild the country. Don't look to anywhere in Europe. No country has the resources. The most obvious candidate is China. Does anyone think that is a positive outcome of the war? But at least we may regain some of the advantages of the so-called breadbasket that Ukraine has traditionally been. The Middle East is on fire, leading to the closure of the Suez Canal. Just think of the cost of that to Europe. The increased costs of goods having to travel all round the Horn of Africa adds a considerable cost to the goods transported. Approximately 40%, apparently. That's rather big, isn't it? Guess who pays those extra costs? And who's paying for all these wars? Wars are ridiculously expensive. Are you getting any benefit from these expenses? Far from it. You are the ultimate payers for these exercises in insanity. Every war these days is a war to end all wars, but every war only sows the seeds for the next one. All I can say is that I hope for your sake you're invested in US military-industrial complex. If not, you're on the losing side of this war, any war. I want to put up a few images that I culled from various sources to act as a backdrop to one of my songs that was written several decades ago, using a particular image that runs through the narrative. That image came true a couple of years ago when Americans started signing bombs and having aggressive and rude inscriptions printed on those bombs. I have to go off track here and say that increasingly I'm sickened by the actions of the world I live in, and I'm wondering what the hell I'm doing surrounded by all these thoroughly objectionable morons. And that leads me to the next song I'm going to add. I live in a world where To give it the title, The Freaks Are in Control. The bad news for readers is, you do too. Not a very good start to the new year. I go back a long way, and I can remember a musical that was playing in London when I was still in junior school. Oh dear. It had a title with a very contemporary ring. Stop the World, I Want to Get Off.
They build bombs with the taxes you pay. There are thousands of people who work every day building bombs with the money donated by you to drop on some kids, just a family or two. It's another job done with the money you paid. Are you pleased it's turned out that way? Are you pleased it's turned out that way? Those people who died, was it just their bad luck? Did you know all those folks? Did you hate them that much? That you paid so much money to have them killed? That you paid so much money for people so skilled in another job done with the money you paid? Are you pleased it turned out that way? Are you pleased it's turned out that way? Was it money well spent? Could you spare all that dough? Will you sleep so much better every night now you know that the bombs that they dropped, it was yours? No thanks are needed, of course, for the funding you give for this game. And the bomb that they dropped bears your name. Yes, the bomb that they dropped bears your name. And I hope you work hard to make money to donate more shekels, more dollars to make you feel safe as you subsidize death, as you work overtime, killing kids you don't know. I guess it feels fine seeing bombs that you paid for, all with your name. Are you proud they carry your name? Are you proud they carry your name? You'll pay, and you'll pay again someday, and someone will make sure that you pay a lot more.
Something's wrong with this world. Things just aren't going right. What's really black's called white, and I don't know what to do. And what I want to know same for you. I'm lied to. I'm lied to. Armageddon's here, and the end is very near, with a daily dose of fear doled out to everyone. And what I want to know, are things the same for you? I'm lied to. I'm lied to. What do you do when you're lied to? What do you do when you know that the freaks are in control? What moves can you make? Is there somehow you can escape? Or are you doomed to lose your soul? Freaks! The freaks! The freaks are in control. The freaks, the freaks, the freaks are in control. So many under house arrest, and they make you wear a mask, but you know it's all a farce. We all know darn well what the politicians don't tell are things the same for you. We're lied to. We're lied to. What's this all about? Are they out to destroy your soul? The freaks are in control. Don't let them grind you down. And what I want to know, are things the same for you? I'm lied to. I'm lied to. What do you do when you're lied to? What do you do when you know that the freaks are in control? What moves can you make? Is there somehow you can escape? Or are you doomed to lose your soul? The freaks, the freaks, the freaks are in control. The freaks, the freaks, the freaks are in control. The freaks, the freaks, the freaks are in control. The freaks, the freaks, the freaks are in control. The freaks, the freaks, the freaks.